It's that time of year again. The time where we have to change our clocks forward an hour and we lose an hour of sleep. And we got to deal with that for most of the year once again. And yep, say bye-bye to standard time. Say bye-bye to all the decent stuff we had for the last few months. Because now daylight saving time is upon us once again. In my last rant on daylight saving time, I have talked about how it sucks that we when we go back an hour and we go back to standard time, we have the sunset a lot earlier. I used to hate that, but now I'm perfectly fine with that because early sunset's not that big of a deal. But I did hate that when I got home from school and it was already dark. But now when you get older, you're used to standard time. You're used to that because it's the winter and it's still an earlier sunrise. Because if we kept daylight time the whole time, and later in the winter, the sun wouldn't rise until 8 in the morning. And that would be pretty bad. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how they're trying to legalize daylight time again. And I did make a rant about it a little bit in my last rant, but I didn't go too much into detail. There's this law that Florida Senator Marco Rubio is proposing called the Sunshine Protection Act. And it's passed the Senate and the House. However, it has yet to be passed by the President, but all the versions of this law has failed. They're wanting to make permanent daylight time a thing, where we wouldn't have to change our clocks again, but we'd still lose an hour of sleep, but we still wouldn't change our clocks again for a lot of states. The current law, the Standard Time Act, makes it so only states can change back to standard time, which is what Washington State is doing, and that's what Arizona and Hawaii is doing. They only do standard time year-round. But this Sunshine Protection Act law doesn't sound like a good law at all, because remember back in the 70s, where only for a year President Nixon did a full daylight time thing just to try and help with war and such like that? Well, the permanent daylight time thing didn't work out very well. Well, because parents didn't really like that they had to take their kids to school in the dark, and it was too dark early in the morning, and the sun didn't rise until 8 a.m. in the morning. That was pretty bad. So because of that, permanent daylight time failed. So I don't understand why they want to try this again. I know some could probably say, ooh, well why don't you start school later? Start school at like 9 a.m. or later on in the day, and that way kids could get more sleep in. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't have to do that at all, period, in my opinion. What we should probably do is keep standard time year-round. I know some would hate standard time year-round because, oh, well, the sun will rise too early at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to have to do that. I have to close my curtains and such. But think about this. What about for the people who are still in school, like before the summer, and once they have to go back into school? What about the kids who hate waking up early to go to school? If they got to wake up early, or the sunrise has already happened, then guess what? They don't have to worry about waking up early in the dark for the most part, except for during the winter. So that would actually be a good thing. Not to mention if we stayed on standard time, we still would get like an hour later, just not, like the sun wouldn't set at 8 or 9 p.m., it would set at 7 or 8 p.m. That is not a big deal at all. Not to mention, I've also mentioned how in my last rant, which I will go over myself reading the article from the last video in a bit, I have talked about how people get into heart attacks, medical accidents, and people have gotten into car accidents because of them being tired after going to work. Thousands of people will die in the weekend of March, like in one of the first weekends of March, where daylight savings time occurs, where it goes back from 1:59 to 3 a.m. because of daylight saving. If you think of the switch to daylight saving time at all, you probably just consider it a noise that causes you to lose some sleep or be late for lunch because you forgot to reset the clock in your living room. But when scientists carefully look at the consequences of setting the clocks ahead an hour each year, they discover a host of almost unbelievably scary facts. And this goes here, why daylight saving time is a secret killer. The first of those, the cost of change in human's life. Yeah, that's right. I mean, to most other people, daylight saving time seems like a tiny thing. But according to rigorous studies, it's actually a killer. As sleep researcher Matthew Walker explains in his book, Why We Sleep, losing just an hour of sleep stresses the cardiovascular system, which could tip some folks with heart issues over the edge. That's why the number of heart attacks tick up significantly the day after we set the clocks ahead. A similar trend appears when scientists look at accident statistics. One lost hour doesn't seem enough to cause drowsy driving. But if that were really the case, why then does the number of traffic accidents shoot up the day after daylight saving time begins in both the northern and southern hemispheres? Deadly industrial accidents also rise sharply. Experts are convinced that lost hour of sleep is far more consequential than most of us imagine. Not only that, but people actually get late because of daylight time. That could happen, though. And you go to school, and I mean, some teachers or your boss at work will understand, but then they'll be like, because you're clocked in an hour late or you went to school an hour late, they're like, "Oh, you're an hour late. Where have you been?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I thought it was 8 o'clock. No, it's 9 o'clock. Did you not think about to change your clock on Sunday?" Now, some parents and some family members will be aware. What if your family wasn't aware and you didn't know and you still went to school anyway without knowing? Yeah, some teachers or people at school would just be douchebags and just give you the detention just because you weren't aware that it was daylight time or something. Or if you're not aware that the clock changed back, you'll be at work or something a little too early and you could have got extra sleep. So yeah, some people would forget about the clocks change, and that's why changing the clocks is not a good idea. Now, back in the old days, I can understand why daylight saving could actually might have worked in some cases, maybe for the war and such. But guess what? We lost an hour of sleep due to Germany and other countries adopting it. So yep, thanks to Kaiser Wilhelm, we've lost an hour of sleep. But now in the modern era, modern energy is a lot different. For example, when the rest of Indiana that wasn't certain areas that already had daylight saving, like some of the eastern time zone parts of Indiana, when the rest of Indiana adopted daylight saving in the year 2006, energy costs actually raised 1% up, because modern energy is not the same. Like when you use daylight time, energy is used a whole lot more, so it doesn't really save energy, because our lights and public places and such will still be on any time of the day, no matter what. We just wouldn't have like any time to save energy because the lights will still be on at any time. I also have one more thing to say as well. Why more places other than Saskatchewan and Canada, as well as Arizona and Hawaii, more states and as well as more provinces in Canada should do standard time more. And I'm glad Washington's also doing that too. And guess what? Most of Mexico, except for the border, most of Mexico is already doing standard time year-round. So only places near the border will still do daylight saving. Places near the United States border are still doing daylight saving time, still doing the time change. But everywhere else in Mexico, they got rid of daylight saving time, which that's a good thing. And I hope the same can be said about many other countries too, including the UK. Like some countries like Iceland, for example, they don't do daylight saving time, as well as US territories like Puerto Rico and such too. They don't do daylight saving time either. Like when the UK goes back an hour in the fall, they are the same time zone as Iceland. So if we didn't do daylight saving time, the UK as well as Iceland will be in the same time zone. Not a big deal. Like, not a big deal at all, actually. So, yes. My opinions have greatly changed. I'm all for just standard time year-round, because as an adult, I'm more used to the earlier dark. And a lot of people like the dark earlier, and that's just normal during the winter. I mean, some would say if we still kept daylight time, we just have, the sun would set too early, but then the sun would rise late. Because that would be pretty bad. I don't want to have to get up for work and it's still pitch black. Because even if you don't go to school anymore, even if you're not a kid and you're not one of those parents who have to take kids to school in the dark, still, you might have to go to work when it's still in the dark. And I don't want to have to go to work when it's still pitch black outside. I even noticed that too, because for some reason in March, November, because originally in April to October, like in April they do the spring forward and October they did fall back. Well, because of the sun being set in Halloween tour, they decided to expand it for trick-or-treaters, for little kids to do trick-or-treating more often, just to have daylight saving continue until the first weekend of November, just for kids to do trick-or-treating. I have a solution for that instead. If they want to keep trick-or-treating Don't expand daylight saving. What they should do is have trick-or-treating start earlier in the day. Maybe end school earlier if they have school on Halloween. Just so kids can do trick-or-treating so they don't have to worry about so parents don't have to worry about doing trick-or-treating in the dark. That would be a whole lot better. And I don't even notice in March that when we start doing the spring forward, the sun doesn't rise until an hour later. So when I used to go to work and work as a dishwasher, I saw it was still pitch black even until 7 o'clock to 7:30. Instead of 6 to 6:30 like it was earlier in the first few weeks of the time change. It felt like eternal night. It felt like it was still dark later on in the later on when the time change happened. So we got a glimpse of what a permanent daylight time could do, even if the time change started in March. Because I know some people be like, ooh, we should still keep daylight time permanently. Well, that's not a big deal. We don't have to do the time change anymore. And I'm like, well, I mean, you do have a point, but I don't want to have to go to work in pitch black like I always would have done. And the sun wouldn't rise for another hour. Because that's what would happen during the winter. So permanent daylight time is not a good idea at all. And I think I've already had to explain that, but I just thought I'd mention that one more, just get it in your daylight saving supporters' heads, because you can't please everybody with the time change. You really can't. I would have preferred if we would have kept daylight time. They should have kept it going spring forward in April instead of March. And instead of expanding, it should have kept in October and just do my plan for if anybody still does trick-or-treating. Even though I think trick-or-treating is kind of stupid. I mean, that's what they should have done instead of expanding daylight time, expanding the fall back to the first weekend of November instead of October. That was my remake or updated daylight saving time rant for the year 2024. And yeah, that'll be about all. But I still have one bonus thing to say because I almost forgot. They said daylight saving time was good for the farmers. Well, actually, the farmers didn't want daylight saving time at all. Most farmers were against it. Even some farmers will tell you they don't know any farmer who has benefited from the time change and farming activity as well as daylight saving. So there you go. So some of you who still think that the farmers were for that, actually no. The farmers weren't for daylight saving time at all. And even, like I said, some farmers can tell you that. Anyways, since I don't have anything else to say, that's about all for the daylight saving time rant. This should be my last rant on daylight saving time. In my opinion, go for standard time. Be like Arizona, Hawaii, and as well as the territories like Puerto Rico, as well as Saskatchewan and the rest of Mexico. Do standard time year-round. Change the clocks back in November. And don't make us lose an hour of sleep again. No more time changing forward. No more heart attacks for people and such. No more car accidents. We don't need any more of that. Modern energy is a whole lot different now, so we don't need that anymore. Anyways, that was about all. This has been Brick. I'm out.